Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Johnversations Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John Connor, saying thank you for spending a little time with us this week. You guys may notice we were off for a couple of weeks, then we came back, we had a few episodes, and then we were off again for another few weeks. Unfortunately, my daughter and I got sick with some crazy upper respiratory kind of thing. We were both sick for the last 2 weeks. And I wanted to spare you guys from having an episode where I was just coughing and wheezing all the way through. Luckily, not COVID, which is nice. My daughter and I both tested. With having a little kid, it's not fun when they have to get a COVID test, but they just don't understand what it's all about and stuff like that. But she was brave. She held it down. And again, just on the mend. So happy, healthy, glad to be back. We've got the next 4 weeks worth of guests booked out for you guys. Super excited about the episodes that are coming up and this week's episode. Before we start off, I did want to take a minute to let you guys know we have a brand new website. That's right, johnversationspodcast.com. Head on over. Some serious updates. You can actually subscribe to the podcast right from the page, which is awesome. You don't have to go into Apple Podcasts and subscribe there, follow us, anything like that. You can do it right from the page, which is really cool. Also, all the audio and video, all on the website now. So used to be before you could listen to the audio, but you had to click over to YouTube to watch the video. Not the case anymore. You can actually listen, search older episodes, watch the video. It pulls everything from YouTube, everything all in one place. So it's very, very cool. Not only that, you can also leave a review, right? So if you don't want to go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, if you don't want to go through the extra hassle, just go to johnversationspodcast.com, click the little menu button. You can do it right from your phone, hit the review section, and then leave a review. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear, what you're liking about the show. What could we do differently? Who your favorite guest was? Who'd you like to see on the podcast? We just want to hear from you. And again, just see what we can do to keep making the best content possible for you. You can also follow us on the socials there. So it's all linked up. Remember, please, if this is your first time listening to the show, we are super happy to have you. If you're a returning guest, you listen every week. Again, thank you so much for tuning in every week and sharing the show with your friends. Please head over and follow us at Facebook at Johnversations, Instagram at Johnversations, Twitter at @Johnversation. We would absolutely love to have you as part of the conversation, to hear what you think and just to get your feedback there, right? So again, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for checking us out. If this is your first time, remember to share the show with your friends, your family. Hopefully you guys are enjoying listening to it as much as we're enjoying doing it. Before we got into the episode, I did want to talk about something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. So over the last month or so here in Middle Tennessee, we've had some really bad rain, some flooding, particularly in Humphreys County. Unfortunately, some people lost their lives. Over 500 homes were damaged. Part of the high school, they've lost football fields, baseball diamonds. It's just been bad, right? And it seems like a lot of areas in the country are getting hit pretty hard, but this one just took a pretty hard hit particularly. So if you guys would like to donate, because we're all about a good cause, right? We want to help out people in need. We want to help however we can. You can actually donate to the United Way of Humphreys County. If you text flood relief to 26989, that will let you donate directly to the United Way of Humphreys County. In addition, if you want to, go about it a different way, if you're not one of those fancy text people, you can go into the show notes and click the link in the notes for the United Way of Humphreys County website and donate right from there. So if you're in a position where you can help somebody else, you're fortunate enough to have an extra, $2, $3, $5, whatever, every little bit helps. They're rebuilding homes, helping people who've lost loved ones and things like that. So please, if you can find it in your heart, help out. I know those people would be very, very grateful. So with that being said, let's talk about our guest this week. Super excited. And I know that I always say I'm super excited, but I honestly think it's because I get a chance to sit down with some really incredibly talented people. My guest today is a actor, writer, director, screenwriter. Her Instagram is absolutely insane. She does these crazy makeup videos, just super fun to watch, super engaging, super cool to tune into. It's one of my favorite Instagram accounts on the internet. We sat down to talk about her career, what led her to making the videos that she made. So this week I get a chance to sit down with the amazing Rena MacMonegle. Super excited for you guys to check it out. Let's go ahead and jump into the episode. But before we do, just hope you guys are healthy. Hope you're happy. Hope your families are well. And thank you again so much for tuning in. Let's do it. Rena, thank you so much for being here. I've followed you on Instagram for a while and am kind of blown away by what you post and the crazy makeup effects that you do and things like that. So I'm very, very happy that you were able to come on and sit down and talk. And finding you on Instagram and then kind of looking into you, I was like, oh, like you do way more than just makeup. But I mean, you do screenwriting and acting and directing. And I watched some of your shorts on YouTube. Watch your reel. It's very, very cool. So just wanted to say thank you for being here again. I'm super excited to have this time to chat with you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So, I started off kind of talking about the Instagram, and I definitely want to get to that. But from what I understand, again, you kind of do a little bit of it all. Like you act, you direct, you have been a script supervisor, you do screenwriting, things of that nature. And looking into you, I found out that you were born in Asheville, South Carolina. Is that correct?
Asheville, North Carolina.
North Carolina. I'm sorry. I've never been to the Carolina, so I get them mixed up. So, I definitely want to get into what you're doing now, but take me back a little bit. Like, what was it like growing up in Asheville, and when did you kind of, I guess, like this passion for film and makeup and stuff like that? Is that something that started young for you? Walk me through it a little bit.
With film, it's honestly, acting was the first thing I ever remember wanting to do. I remember being 2 or 3 years old and telling my parents that's what I wanted. And of course, my mom's a pharmacist and my dad's a meteorologist. So they're very logical, science-driven people. And so they were like, no, that's insane. I don't even know how to start that. Like, we're not going to pursue that. I have a second cousin who's, he's much older than me. He was an adult at the time, but he was on Broadway in the 90s when I was growing up in Asheville. He was in Rent, Manly Pope. He's got done like a couple of, I think he's been on CSI and things like that. So that was kind of my parents' understanding of that world was, this distant cousin, like struggling actor up in New York. So they were like, no, this isn't going to be your life. So then I went to college and did it anyways.
Now, I mean, how did that, because from what I understand, you went to the University of North Carolina, and you studied psychology, screenwriting, acting, directing. So what was that like for your parents, even though it's funny because I grew up playing in bands. So my thing was I was always going to be a musician. And when I told my mom, like, I'll see you in 4 weeks, I'm going to be on the road and living in a van, she was like, you're crazy. Like, go to college. You know what I mean? So like, what was the response when you were kind of like, I get that you guys don't think this is something I should be doing or maybe it doesn't seem logical, but I'm going to go for it anyway.
There was never really a big discussion about it or a big, sitting them down and telling them this is what I was going to do. It all always just kind of happened and they just kind of rolled with it. Especially when I started talking about, directing and like the production side of things and writing. They had always, from a young age, I had teachers who told them that I needed to be a writer. So I think they were already kind of prepared for that side of it. Plus my dad is actually in news. So he's around a lot of production people and a lot of people who will leave that and go into film. So I think they were kind of prepared for it. So when I switched my major, I don't think they were really all that shocked. They've been pretty supportive since then, even if they don't really totally understand the world that it is.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I think that's a luxury that sometimes we may take for granted. You know, I like being older now, like I'm 36 now. And when I was younger, it was kind of like, you know, my mom was like, what are you doing? You should be going to college, but she still kind of let me do what I wanted to do. You know, she like, you know, was like, all right, I guess you're going to be living in a van for a little bit. So I think it's something that at least for me, I didn't realize I'd kind of taken advantage of until, or not even taken advantage, but what a privileged situation I was in as far as support until I got older, where she was like, you know, I was just like, oh, well, you know, if I fail, she's okay with me failing. You know what I mean? Did you have that same kind of sense where it's just like, you know, flap your wings, little bird, and you know, hopefully you hit the sky, you know?
Kind of. I haven't really had that many discussions with my parents about it, so I don't actually know how they feel about it. I mean, I know that they hope that I succeed, but I mean, you're in the arts, so I'm sure you kind of have a similar experience where, you know, sometimes getting your friends and family to like watch or listen or like be involved in the things you're doing, sometimes it's like pulling teeth. So they're a little selective about the things that they'll watch. I've done a lot of horror, and my dad won't watch any of that because he absolutely will not watch anything where I am hurt, even if it's obviously very fake. And then they get very excited about things. I had a very, very small role in Patsy and Loretta that filmed in Nashville. And my parents told everyone about that. They were so psyched about that one. And I was really surprised because it was such a small role. So it's funny seeing the things now that they get excited about, and the things that they just go right over their head.
Well, and I can imagine, you know, I've got she'll be 3 in October, but it is, you know, I've got a little girl, and every day she does something that kind of astounds me. So I can imagine as a parent, you know, even if it is just like if she was at 3 years old, if she was, you know, on the local news, I would DVR it and be like, everybody watch this. Look, I've got the cutest kid in the world, like on the, you know what I mean? So I'm sure that there is, you know, especially when it is something like the arts where the odds tend to be, you know, stacked against you in a certain way, where when you have those moments of success, it's, you know, it's almost a testament to beating those odds. And I'm sure it makes it a whole lot easier to be like, look what my kid did. Like, look how awesome my kid is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I wanted to ask this because you had mentioned that, you know, you've done a lot of horror and looking into, you know, some of the things that you've done. You know, Remnant 13 is on Amazon now, from what I understand. And that is, you know, kind of like a zombie tale. I know I was checking out the trailer and the snippets, and you're featured pretty prominently in that. So I wanted to ask, you know, like when you started on your path of directing and writing and things like that, was horror something that you had always kind of had a love for? Or did you just kind of stumble into it? You know, talk to me a little bit about that. Cause, you know, following you on Instagram, you do all these, like you've done a Pennywise look and you do like Harry Potter. So, you know, you do a lot of cool stuff that is in that realm. So I didn't know if it was like kind of like you were drawn to it or just kind of found yourself there and that kind of, you know, boosted your love of it.
I think it's definitely more that I just found myself there. In indie film, a lot of what's going on is horror. I don't know what it is. It's just everyone wants to make a horror movie. So, and I personally don't even watch that many horror movies. It's weird. I'll listen to ghost podcasts and true crime podcasts all day long. I love ghost stories, but I will not watch a horror movie. But I love making horror movies. Like I love doing like low budget indie things. And then as far as the makeup goes, there's just a lot to do like in the horror world with cosplay and makeup out of things that, I already have. So I think I just fell into it on accident, probably starting with Remnant 13, and I've just kind of stayed there and lived there a little while.
That's cool. And I think you're right. And I've heard a lot about, especially in the indie film world, like horror seems to get turned out quite a bit. And I don't know if it just seems like, if you're going to be making a film, especially if like, it's an indie film or, you're kind of like testing yourself to see what you can do with what you have. It seems like it would be like a lot of fun. It seems like it'd be a lot of fun to do if just me personally, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to try my hand at doing a horror film, or I'm going to try my hand at doing like a sentimental drama. I'd be like, let me do the horror film because there's makeup and there's like excitement. I get to plan these cool kills and zombies and stuff like that. So it's did doing the makeup, because again, the makeup stuff that you do on Instagram, and if you're listening to the show, please go into the show notes, follow Rena on Instagram. You will not be disappointed. But did that aspect kind of grow a little bit? Like, did you find yourself like once you were on set and stuff like that, then did that kind of lead to like the makeup work and the cosplay that you do now? Or is that something that like you were doing beforehand?
The makeup actually is pretty recent. Like it's something like I always had fun, like growing up, like playing with makeup and stuff like that. But, it was really something that I didn't have time to pursue and mess with until, 2020 actually. And then when everything started.
What happened in 2020?
Oh, I don't know. So, of course I had tons of projects lined up all the way through the spring that, all got canceled and shut down. And I was looking for an outlet. And then of course, being an actor, still felt like I needed to have social media content. So I started doing makeup. I'm sorry, my cat is attacking the chair right now.
Oh, that's fine.
It was very distracting. Okay. Okay, please stop. Please stop. You're noisy. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We're
cat friendly here, so it's not a problem at all.
She just I'm afraid she's about to jump over and get my face.
As long as it's a chair and not you, this podcast would go real dark real quick. So
it might be me in just a minute. I'm sorry.
2020, you're an actor. You had projects lined up. Everything kind of came to a halt. It sounds like it still came out of a need of doing something creative.
Yeah. I was definitely looking for an outlet, but there was just something more expressive about sitting down with a bunch of colorful makeup than staring at a black and white screen trying to write a script. And it gave me something to do, away from my computer, where I could kind of like zone out and get drawn into some random thing on Netflix and experiment with makeup. I'm sorry. She's been sleeping all day and now
No, it's fine. She's excited.
I'm just going to push you over here. Don't bite me.
No, it's totally fine. That's one of the with COVID and I know you're in the Nashville area. I'm in the Nashville area as well. So it's, our numbers are crazy and stuff like that. So that's, one of the fun things about getting to do everything virtually still is, I'm sure people listening hear my kid running up and down the hallway every episode and stuff like that. So it's totally fine. I wanted to ask because, like you had mentioned, it kind of gave you a creative outlet and gave you something to focus on. Cause I can imagine too, like throughout 2020 where I'm sure it was hard when you're thinking about writing, like it was just kind of such a depressing year that I'm sure it was kind of hard to like come up with any kind of like positive inspiration. So number one, I think it's pretty astounding that you were able to find that in, kind of creating this online presence. But then number two, kind of following you, going through and seeing, what people are saying about your looks and how creative, like and when I say looks, like your makeup looks, not like people are like, hey, looking good. We're not, we're very respectful on the show, but seeing people kind of react positively to what you're doing, like what is that feeling been like? And was that something that did that make things a little bit easier, I guess? Cause it seems like, for people who like what you're doing, they really like what you're doing. And it seems like there's almost like a little community around it.
That's interesting. I haven't had this discussion with anyone before, so
we asked the tough questions.
Yeah, I've spent so long cultivating it, and I felt like it's been slow to grow. So I don't actually see it that way. For me, it still feels very small. Like there's huge creators out there with millions of followers, and I have my 20 consistent people who comment on my stuff, and most of them I have never met before, which is a weird feeling when I stop and think about it. Because I think I spend so much time just trying to come up with the next thing that I'm going to do. And like sometimes it's just the next distraction that I haven't taken a step back and realized, like, oh, look at, they're like actually people here who are invested in what I'm doing. And that is kind of a wild thought. I haven't processed that yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's for me, cause we're not, I always tell people we're like Joe Rogan, but we don't have anywhere near as much elk meat or ivermectin, right? Like we're Joe Rogan with a much lower testosterone, but like it's the same kind of thing. Like this show, I have a wonderful friend and partner in Michigan. His name is Matt. Shout out Mat Halliday, but he does all the post audio stuff. But it's the same thing. We have it's as of now, it's a small community, but the people who support it really support it. And I think it's easy, especially when you're a creator, you get in this mindset where it's like, oh, well, it's 20 people, how do I make it 50 people? How do I make it 100 people? And sometimes it's hard to step back and say like, yeah, but these 20 people, it's like a seedling, you know what I mean? It's like you plant the seed and then, before the oak is there's gotta be, that little sapling that pops, you know what I mean? So it's kind of cool to think of it as far as like you said, you never met any of these people. And that's the thing for me too, is like, I always want to comment. I always want to comment on your stuff, but I'm also a married man. And so I am very self-conscious about like what I comment on, and not because I'm ever like disrespectful or like stepping outside of my lane, but I'm just like, I need to be very careful about, what I comment on, just out of like some weird, like self guilt for like I have to like punish myself before I do anything. You know what I mean? So
it kind of makes sense that you would have to like, because you wouldn't want something to be perceived incorrectly or like a friend to stumble across it and take it the wrong way. And so, I mean, that does make sense.
Oh yeah. My friend, she's a friend of my wife and I, she's been on the show, but my friend Emily, one of the first times I met her, she came to our house and my wife got called to work, like an emergency call. And so she had to leave. She was like, I'm sorry guys, I got to go. So it's me and Emily, who I had met maybe once before, were just sitting in my house. And I was just like, I made sure I'm all the way on the other side of the room. And then after about 3 minutes, I was like, I'm going outside. Would you like to go outside in public in the sunlight where, you know, people can see us very clear? And not because I would ever do anything I'm not supposed to do, but I have this like fear that somebody may misconstrue something that I say, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Some people are just looking to start drama. This is totally sidetracked, but one time I was driving in the car with my little brother, with my own little brother. Like I was in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden he gets a text from his girlfriend. And she's like, who are you in the car with right now? Such and such saw you in the car with a girl. He's like, my sister.
Right. You don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah. It just you never know how things are going to be construed by someone wanting to start something.
Well, how many siblings do you have?
Just the one.
Okay, just one. I'm the oldest of four, so it's you know, like big family, and for me that's always, I think, kind of why I leaned into playing music, and now I do the podcast. It was like growing up, I always found myself kind of, when there's that many kids, it's like you're kind of fighting for the attention. You know what I mean? Like you want the spotlight. Like, hey, look at me. And I think it just kind of transposed into the things I like doing. Did you have any of that when you were a kid? Like, did you have the I just like all eyes on me. Like, look what I can do.
I don't think so. I guess, I mean, there were only the two of us, and I'm also the oldest. But I'm honestly the kind of person who I've always I'll downplay everything. Like I'll do this thing and I'll be really proud of it, and I'll just kind of like nudge it at you and just be like, it's there. Like, it's cool. Like, do you think, it's not a big deal. It's fine. I've always been that person where I just downplay everything to a point that, that people will just be like, no, I didn't realize that you actually wanted like me to say something nice about this.
Well, what do you think drives that? Like, is it kind of like a fear of, you don't want to be perceived as pushy, or like, are you really proud of it? But, I know writing music, that was a big thing for me. It was always like, I wrote the song. We took it to the band. We kind of worked it out. I'm super proud of it. But then you have that, like, I love this, but now I have to put it out into the world. And then you have the thought of like, are people going to love it as much as I do? Like, are people going to respond to this? Is it going to mean something? So do you have, with the work that you do you have any of those feelings where it's like, man, I hope it gets received as well as, I hope the reception is as well as I think it is, Yeah,
I think there's definitely a lot of layers to that. And I personally have a lot of imposter syndrome in the film industry because it is such a male dominated industry. And I had some very disheartening experiences that, dated all the way back to film school, like the very, very beginning. And it is such a competitive thing where if you're going to put something out, it has to be so good. And even if it is, and it doesn't have, the right hype behind it, or if you don't put something online at exactly the right time and play the algorithm in the right way, then it doesn't go anywhere. And there's just some of it just feels like gambling. And it is really disheartening to put so much effort into something and to love it so much and then no one ever see it. So sometimes I think it feels safer just to do something and then just hold on to it. Just keep it just for yourself.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it's like almost like that. Like, it's an overused analogy, but I think it's like, like I'm the parent and this is my baby, you know what I mean? And as soon as like, I think about that a lot having a kid, but it's like, there's going to be a certain point, even now, like, it feels like yesterday we were potty training her and now like she doesn't want help going to the bathroom. She's like, I got this, like, we're good. So, I know as a parent, it's like, you think a lot about like, there's going to be a time where like this kid doesn't need me and it goes out and it does its own thing and it has to stand on its two legs. And I can imagine, when you, so like, for example, ZX12, which is a short film that you directed, not only did you looked shocked when I brought that up. Not a lot of people
shocked. That was a long time ago.
Well, but this is my question, right? So you do ZX12, you win awards at film festivals. Not only do you win awards at film festivals, but then you're in the short film corner at Cannes International Film Festival in 2015, right? So kind of the flip side to that coin, because I know like you work on something and you hold on to it because, we've got this sense of it's not going to be received as the way that I want it. But then talk to me about that other feeling, right? Because you put something like ZX12 out, which you can watch on YouTube. We're going to put it in the links on the notes or in the show notes. So go watch it. But what is that feeling like where, you put something out and you're winning awards and you're at international film fest? Like, talk to me about the other side of that coin, I guess.
That one's an interesting example. And if you do link that one and you do happen to watch it, just know that was a long time ago. And we did that on literally no money in no time. That's a feeling that I really struggle with, because even when something's doing well, there's always the sense of I could have done better. And there's always someone whose film looks better, whose plot is more concise, whose dialogue is stronger, whose costume design is better. So I'm just always thinking that I can do something better. So I don't know that I've reached the other side of the coin yet. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's fair, and I think that's a fair assessment. And I also think that, that's got to be, for people who are successful and kind of push themselves to create the best things that they can. I'm sure that that's kind of a shared mindset from a lot of people. Because if that was 2015. So if you were like, well, that was great, you know what I mean? Then where's that drive for the, how can I do better on the next thing? How can I push myself? How can I, kind of come out stronger because of this? I also have to say though, that I think it is a testament to what you do that I guess that short film had something about it where, maybe their footage looked better, or, the lighting was better, but like your film was the one that made it to Cannes. You know what I mean? I also think that's got to say something, you know what I mean? Where, okay, yeah, maybe somebody looks better, maybe somebody's costume design was better, but what was it about what I did that got me here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there were definitely, I haven't thought about that script in a minute. There were definitely parts of that one that I was very happy with, and overall, that was a very surreal experience, because I had that one in the short film corner as a part of the American Pavilion Student Filmmaker Program, where I interned for the duration of the festival in 2015. So looking back on it, at the time, the whole thing felt so surreal, because, I had this little 15-minute short film premiering in France at the same festival that like Natalie Portman's first ever directorial debut is happening. And, thousands of films get into the short film corner, but it was, especially looking back on it and realizing, I was 23, 24 when I took that thing to France. looking back on it, I think I can feel a lot better about it than I did at the time. I guess just because I'm a little older, I have a more distance and kind of really put that in perspective. That yes, I was very fortunate to be able to do that. I would actually really like to expand on that script. It's been a while since I thought about that one.
Well, there you go. I mean, it gives you something to revisit. And, like, I don't know. I feel like it's all kind of like frame of mind because, like you said, like, 1,000 movies get in, but like how many, I guess my thing is like how many people are submitting, you know what I mean? Is it like 1,000 get in and like 6,000 are submitting and, yours gets in, I don't know. I was, and I have to admit, like I said, everyone on this podcast is like, or who listens to this podcast, is like, we know you have a kid, shut up. But, my wife is in school for her master's program right now. So when I'm not working my day job, I have my daughter. And, so everything I do is like, I watch like 5 minutes and pause and, but it really, it kept my attention. And, the male lead in it was just like, I don't know. He had this like look of almost like emotional anguish on him. I don't know. I thought it was really good. I liked it a lot.
Thank you. Matt Sara is an incredible actor. Unfortunately, he still lives in Greensboro and I live in Nashville, and we've lost touch in the last year, but he is an excellent actor. He was also in Hunger Games 1 and 2.
Oh, very cool. Well, let me ask you.
He was in the third one, but they cut his scene.
Well, I think we should all write in. If you're listening, let's get a director's cut and just add that scene. But I did want to ask because, you're from North Carolina, not South Carolina, because I'm an idiot. But you're from North Carolina and, you're now a transplant in the Nashville area, which is very similar to me. I grew up in Michigan, spent most of my life there, and I've been here now for coming up on 8 years. So what was it that brought you to Nashville? And for me, like, I think for a lot of people, it's kind of surprising that like, if you're trying to break into that industry, you want to write, you want to direct, things like that. I think their mind would obviously go to, oh, you want to be in LA or New York or something like that. But I know when I lived in Michigan, we had the Michigan Film Incentive Credit. So like American Pie was filmed in Northern Michigan. Scream 4 was, filmed like right down the street from my house, things like that. So I think, people don't necessarily understand that like a lot of stuff is filmed all over the country. Did that have any weight on like bringing you to Nashville and what has your experience been like here as opposed to back home?
So I had the misfortune of graduating from UNCG at the same time that the governor cut the tax incentives in North Carolina, which means that's when Wilmington dried up, which was where most of film happened in North Carolina, because my intention had been to move to Wilmington, North Carolina to pursue film there. But then all of that evaporated around the time that I was trying to find internships my senior year. So, stayed there for a little while and kind of saved money for a while and just wasn't quite brave enough to move out of state. And, my boyfriend at the time, he's also a musician. So he wanted to move to Nashville to pursue that. And so that's where we ended up. Because, yes, there is like there's still more in film happening in Nashville, especially at the time, than there was in North Carolina. Plus, that put me closer to Atlanta. It's much easier to make a day trip down to Atlanta from here than it was back in the middle of North Carolina. And then I've also ended up doing quite a bit in Kentucky. So that puts me closer to a couple different markets.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think, from my understanding, Atlanta is popping as far as they're always, I know Tyler Perry has got his studio there, but there's a lot of different film companies that that do feature lengths and TV shows and stuff like that, all out of Atlanta. So that's got to be kind of cool to be so central to everything.
Yeah, I definitely like the option to travel. I'd certainly like to work in Atlanta more. It's been such an odd year and a half. Definitely trying to get an agent down there again. And then there's just little things that crop up everywhere. I had an audition for something in Mississippi recently. There's things that pop up everywhere. So just the ability to stay mobile and travel and be flexible is so important. And this is such a good location. I feel like I can go in several different directions pretty easily to be on set.
Yeah. And I was wondering, is there something that attracts you more to either like the directing or the screenwriting or the acting? Like, you seem to do it all and to do it well. My question is like, is there something that you're drawn to where you're like, this is what I want to do, but these other things kind of give me additional skill sets or like help me get closer to this? Like out of all of it, like what is this is the one thing that, I would do forever?
That's a tough one. Especially with, at least for me, with acting, writing, and directing, they all go so hand in hand. They have a very similar process. Ideally, I wouldn't really want to choose. I would want to be able to stay flexible and do all three. Really, I enjoy telling stories, and knowing how to write a script and how the pacing should work and how it should translate to set, and how it should be directed and how lines should be delivered. Just all of it works together. And then directing while having acting experience makes me feel like I know how to communicate with actors to get them to the place that they need to be. I really couldn't pick one.
Well, and it's got to be cool to be able to have the toolkit to tell the story. And it's funny that you position it as like, I want to be a storyteller. I was listening to an interview with Bob Odenkirk, who, he's in Mr. Show, he's just a nobody, but like he's, written and directed. But that was his point too, is like, if you're directing, like it's just another way of telling the story. Like if you're an actor, then, you're, even if you're the lead in some big project, like, you're still part of a cast and that cast works together to tell the story. So it, feels like you have to be, how is that? Like, cause if let's say you're directing, right? Like you're kind of the captain of the ship where, if you're in the cast, you're working, with X amount of different actors. And again, you're kind of working together to tell this story. Is that an easy transition for you as far as like, okay, maybe the last project I worked on, like I was the head honcho and now, I have to make sure that I'm playing off this person and I'm not like stepping on their lines, that like I'm giving them the energy to give them the performance that they need. Is there ever, or, I can imagine, when you're an actor and you're working with a certain director or something like that, being like, well, are you sure you want to do it that way? Like, have you thought about doing it this way? Like, are there moments like that for you, or is it hard for you to switch in between those roles?
Yes, sometimes those moments do happen and I try very hard not to. You can kind of figure out, some directors are very, very receptive to ideas from their casting crew. And those are always like the best people to work with, because film is a collaboration. Like it is a collaborative art. It is in some cases hundreds of people coming together to tell one story, and they have to work together cohesively. So when you have a crew but listens to each other and bounces ideas off of each other to try and make the project better without there being some kind of power imbalance or like egos happening. There's always a better product. Some directors, I don't feel like I can say things like that too. So I'll just take what they want and just roll with it. But I think I do it so frequently where I switch roles that it doesn't really faze me, because I've done everything from, just being with like my 4 friends and we just make a little short film together, all the way to working on sets with, Academy Award nominated directors, where of course I'm just going to come in, do my part and run away.
Right. Excuse me, Ron Howard, if you thought about trying this. Like,
yeah.
Well, I can definitely see where, and again, I think that's a very good point too. It's like when people think about like a movie or a film or TV show, it's like, oh yeah, this is the cast and it's like directed by this dude, maybe written by this guy. If you're somebody who's, I kind of nerd out on that stuff a little bit, but I think a lot of people aren't like, yeah, but like, cinematographer is this guy, and the 6 dudes who come in and set up the lights and put the marks on the floor, and so-and-so is doing craft services, and let's not forget about our audio engineers who are holding the boom. Like like you said, there's literally so many people. So I guess, even if you're like a director, like you're still having to operate within this like tapestry of making sure that all of these things kind of coordinate together. So I don't know, maybe it's not as different of a mindset as maybe I thought it was,
Yeah. I don't know that I have anything to build off with that. Sorry. I acted like I did. I don't.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So I did want to ask you this. So, obviously it's hard to say, again, especially being in the Nashville area, like we're on the tail end of COVID, because, the story just came out like a week ago that if we were our own country, we'd be like number 2 in the world for COVID cases. So and you definitely don't have to input anything on this if you're not comfortable, but I'm a very liberal person from a pretty liberal state. So being down here, watching our governor and stuff like that, I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just yelling at my TV, but, once things, if they get back to like a kind of normal, like, what do you see the next couple of years looking like for you? Like, ideally, what would you like to be doing? Is there any projects that you want to work on that excite you, or, talk about, I guess, where you would like, where you would like to see yourself?
Everything is just so strange right now, and everything is in such a point of transition. I'm still in that day-to-day survival mode that started in March of 2020, where it's like, I barely know what I'm going to do like I'm thinking 24 hours ahead still, like at best. And I would love to, really, really be making it in film in a way that I can actually, I guess say that I left my mark in a way. Just, thinking more realistically, it would be great just to make enough money in film just to pay rent. Realistically, that would be a really fun goal. But, I'm up for anything, starring in that Netflix movie one day would be really cool too.
Oh, for sure. Well, and, again, like your makeup videos and even like your TikTok on TikTok, it's Rena Mac on TikTok, right? Is that right?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think it is. I was looking at it today.
Are there numbers in it? I barely understand TikTok.
That's why I'm not on it.
It is Rena Mac. Okay. I was like, is there a 12? I don't know. No, it is Rena Mac.
But if there is a Rena Mac 12 on TikTok, if you're listening, go ahead and follow her too. She'll probably be like, what the hell? So, but, like I say, even though it seems to be a small community that's building, there's a community building it. And if I understand now, you have a Patreon. Is that correct for your makeup stuff?
Yes.
So how'd that feel? Because, we're talking like, you're like, yeah, well, I've got 20 people and I've never met them, but like you're in a position where you're opening yourself up where people can, obviously people like what you're doing enough where they can pay to see more of it and kind of help you move to the level that you want to go to. So what's that been like?
That's still very fresh. I just started that. So it is a very surreal experience to know that there are people invested enough to, pay monthly for extra content, like seeing me more, which is, it's a very odd concept to me.
That's why I haven't started my OnlyFans, because I'd be so busy. So no, I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, you're fine. That was a whole other tangent. So I don't know. I totally lost my train of thought. Just the whole concept of OnlyFans just lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about how, it's surprising. It's still kind of surprising to you that people would, want to subscribe to see more of you online and like what is it? Because again, what you do is really cool. You know what I mean? I've shown my wife, I'm like, look at this Harry Potter one. Look at this, the Pennywise one. I'm a huge fan of it. Like I'm a little bit of a horror nerd too. So when you did it, I was like, look at this one. Like I was just kind of like showing off what you do. We're just standing in the kitchen, but like you put a lot of effort into these videos. And even though they're only like, Instagram videos are like less than a minute before you have to put them on like IGTV or whatever. Mm. So like you've got like a soundtrack on each one. Like you're doing cuts. It's like obvious that you're taking your filmmaking talent, for features and shorts and stuff like that and being like, let me condense this into a 1 minute, just quick video. But what I'm wondering is like, what about it is surprising as far as, because it's really cool, so I'm just wondering what's like surprising about more people wanting to be like, yeah, let me see more of this.
I guess I really don't know what's so surprising. I think I'm just a little bit insecure.
But you know what though? Like that's, I think that's all of us. You know what I mean? I think that's like, I'm really enjoying this conversation because of the fact that it's like, I think we're all a little insecure, you know what I mean? But I think it just goes to show that like, if you can kind of push past it, or if you have that like love of creating the way that you do, like it shows that if you have a passion for something and you put it out, even with all that insecurity, like it's going to find a home with someone, which I think is pretty incredible. And I think like that's a pretty cool testament to like what you can do if you're willing to kind of put yourself out there. Like that's pretty rad.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it. Yeah, it's I think that definitely has been something that I've been working on in the last year, because I feel like I've always been kind of a quiet, shy, like person. And I think a lot of people were really surprised at my career path. And so sometimes I feel like I'm pushing my own boundaries with the kinds of photos I post. It's not like I post anything like really crazy, but every now and then I'm like, is this me? Like, is this too edgy? Or are people going to think this is weird? And then watching when social media started going more towards Instagram reels and videos and started pushing that kind of content on their platform, it feels like you have to put even more of yourself out there, which there was a strange disconnect for me because I was like, I'm an actor, so I get on camera and do things all the time. But then I felt uncomfortable doing it in the context of an Instagram reel. So yeah, I think kind of pushing those boundaries and trying to like find myself in that way, I've accidentally just come across all these people who do respond to it, which, you know, this is a nice conversation. These are things that I have not actually sat down and thought about.
Well, awesome. I'm glad that I'm very much enjoying it as well. And I'm glad that it's something that you've and have been enjoying up until this point. And to that point, I did want to ask you this as well, because this is something that I've struggled with. Like I said, I'm 36. You're what? Like, I know you said you were like 22, 23. So you're right around the 30 age, right? I don't want to just straight come out and be like, how old are you, ma'am? But
don't have that long.
But yeah, we're not long for this world. But do you ever, like, for me, like, that's why I'm not on TikTok, because I feel like as soon as I learn something and I'm like, oh, I got Instagram down pretty good. Like I remember like MySpace, and I remember when Facebook first came out, like I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure I went to community college for a semester just to get a school email address so I could sign up for Facebook, because I was like, that's the way that you have to do it. But is that ever a challenge? Because, you know, with this, even with the podcast, like I'm putting together clips and I'm tagging people and stuff. And I want to be active on social media so that people can find what we're doing. And I can, you know, use the group of people that, you know, support the show, and I can share content creators and awesome people like you with them. But sometimes I run into this, like, all right, I've gotten really good. I know how to edit like my Instagram story. And then it's like, God damn it, now I have to learn how to make a reel. And it's all these like cuts and stuff. So do you ever have any of that? Like, as soon as you feel like you figure it out, it's like, fuck, I got to learn something else.
All the time, constantly. Just everything is constantly changing so fast, and you have to relearn everything. Like Instagram recently announced that they are now a video sharing platform, which just, that seems unnecessary. Yes, I'm constantly feel like I'm like right on the cusp of just being left behind on social media. Like I refused to do TikTok for a long time, and then I finally was like, well, maybe I can use this as a tool. And now, of course, you know, it's a whole other like time consuming thing that doesn't make any sense to me, because you know, I made a couple random videos and they did okay, and then all of a sudden I made one skit that got 3 million views. Jesus. It's like, what just happened? And now everything else after that has like 20 views. And I'm like, this, none of it makes sense. Like social media, they claim there's like a whole science and a math behind it, and I'm like, this world doesn't make sense, and it is constantly changing. And sometimes it blows my mind that people spend all this time doing studies about when to post and how to post and what to post, when it's literally a man-made algorithm. Oh, yeah. Like they could just tell us.
Yeah, well, and it's like, you know, I heard someone be like, hey, you want to post in the morning, but like not so early that the people, you know, the West Coast misses it. Because remember, we're 2 hours behind in Central Time and 3 hours behind. And then, you know, you want to get one right about lunch when people are going on their lunch break. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Like my whole thing has just been like, I'm just going to just keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to put stuff out when I want to put it out, and the people who want to find it will find it. You know what I mean? Or like I guess part of me subscribes to like, if you do something long enough, eventually you're going to find an audience, you know what I mean? And when I think about some of the things that, you know, I've loved for years, like they don't start off as these like massive projects, but they start out like, you know, kind of what we're talking about, 20 people really like it and they tell friends, and then that 20 turns into 30 and 40 and things like that. So, you know, I did want to ask you, when you're putting one of these videos together, so like, let's say, okay, we'll talk about this one. So, you know, you recently did like the like the goth kid on the beach, you know, like your favorite season being Halloween, which, you know, I connect with. It's like, that's bigger to me than Christmas. But when you're putting one of these videos together, from like concept to the moment that you post it, like what are we looking at as far as like time frame? How much effort are you doing into each, you know, how many like manpower hours are going into one of these like 1 minute videos?
It definitely varies. Some of the videos I will kind of just totally do on the fly, and some I will think weeks in advance, wouldn't this be a cool thing to do? With the beach one, that one, I think I did 2 videos for that. And it was because the whole point of that one was to just do a photo shoot on the beach, because I thought it would be funny to be dressed for Halloween, but I was on the beach. And since I was at the beach in August, I thought it would be a perfect opportunity. And then while I was there, I thought these 2 like viral sound effects would fit perfectly in this situation. So and they were so small, this was the only reason I could do it, was because they were, you know, 1 or 2 words. Explained to my husband exactly what to shoot. And then he went and did it. So that those videos took 5 minutes to shoot. And then with me editing it later, like 15 minutes total. However, I posted something on Friday, for example, this was a full skull makeup. And
I saw that with the teeth that like come all the way, all the way back. Yeah.
And that took 12, 13 hours.
Oh, Jesus. Well, if it makes you feel good, my daughter loved it. She goes, she's a skeleton.
I was very happy with that one. But of course, filming multiple videos with one look kind of both makes it more worthwhile, but also makes it take longer, because I think I have across both Instagram and TikTok have pieces of it, 4 or 5 videos with that. Plus then I, you know, have pictures of it. So slowing down to, you know, do goofy lip syncs and things certainly makes the process take longer when you're talking about like putting on an elaborate makeup, but then you get more content out of it. So it's I guess it's just whichever one's more important, just throw it on and take pictures at the end, or film the whole process along the way.
And then just kind of like chop it up as far as like, I don't know. I really like your cuts. Like, I feel like you're very deliberate, like with your cuts, and they match up very well to like the music that you're using. It's just, you get a sense of, it's very creative, but it's also very deliberate, which I think is, you know, that's when you can tell a lot of thought has gone into something. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy, you know, whenever you post a new video, I'm like, oh yeah, what's up? Let me check this out. Which, you know, as a guy who's never put on makeup or anything, like, I think that I'm just so far disconnected from like the amount of time that would take to do something. Even just, you know, when I watch my wife do her makeup, I'm like, I just feel so lucky that I don't have to do that. So to find myself so interested and kind of like hanging, like I watched some of your videos like 2 or 3 times to see like okay, like this is where the cut is. And then like watching, I don't know, it's as somebody who that's not normally like something that I would watch, it sucks me in. Like I couldn't, like I could never believe, like if you would have caught me like 3 years ago, I'd never be like, hey, you want to, I'd never imagine I'd be like, let me show these super cool like makeup videos. You know what I mean?
I definitely think that just with the structure of how the reels work, it gives you an opportunity to reach people with different types of content that you normally wouldn't. Because I do try to keep the makeup videos like visually interesting. And I think I don't know this for sure, but the majority of the people that interact with my content and that message me and talk to me through Instagram are not people who put on makeup. They're people who just like watching the videos and like seeing the content. And I will have a lot of people say, I wish I could, I don't wear makeup and I wish I could, or like, I don't have time to, but I really enjoy watching what you do. So it is interesting, seeing kind of the people that you wouldn't expect to reach, with these videos. And then how the cuts play in. There's something really satisfying about a clean transition, which I think is the appeal, because that is such a big thing on Instagram and TikTok is a clean transition, and video editing and film definitely plays into that, because sometimes you'll do those transitions 20 times before you get it right, and you'll never get, like, you'll always know that little like fraction of a second that was off, and like the movement, and like your sleeve was in the wrong spot or your earring was crooked. But it has been interesting to see how those skills come together in these, 60, it only recently became 60 seconds on Instagram. It was 30 seconds on Instagram like 6 weeks ago.
Oh yeah. Well, and I wonder that too. Like, is it, because you went to school for the art of storytelling, right? Like you went to school to like learn how to write a script. You went to school to learn like, what a scene should look like and how to put those scenes together and how to act in those scenes. Is there ever any part of you that's like, God damn it, I went to school, and I didn't go to school to make 1 minute videos.
All the time.
You're just like
all the time. I think that was my biggest frustration on TikTok, was when that became a thing, and when that became, this is how you have to reach an audience, and this is how you have to show your skill set. When I was sitting, like I've learned how to edit on proper software using a real computer. So when I'm sitting there like poking at a screen on TikTok trying to line up, sometimes it is infuriating, because I could do it so much faster in editing software. I could like perfectly shave off like those fractions of a seconds and like resync audio. Like I could do it so much faster. And, there probably out there exists some software in order to do it that I'm unaware of. But yes, I'm very frustrated that I went to school for film and I'm sitting here poking at a screen with my finger trying to edit a clip.
Well, like when we first started this podcast, I was like, oh, you can get, a version of like a downgraded version of Premiere on your phone. And so like the first couple of episodes, I'm literally like I'm like, you're an idiot, dude. Just learn how to do it on the computer. And, but it is funny though, because I'd always dabbled in video editing. Like when I was a kid, me and my friend, like much like you, I had like two best friends that we were always making like silly war movies or karate movies. And, I had always had to buy, my mom got so pissed because she bought me like 3 cameras, because we'd be, doing some karate movie and somebody would kick the camera and then the lens would break, and she'd be like, I forget but I'd always kind of like dabbled a little bit. And then with the podcast, I was like, all right, I have to learn Premiere. I have to be able to sit down and learn how to do this. And I'm wondering if this kind of works in reverse, because for me, when I first started doing the show, putting it together, I was like, it would take me, 2 hours to edit, one of these interviews or one of these conversations. And now I've got, I know where this goes. I know where this goes. I can sit down, I can get, the audio done, the video done. I can get it done 25 minutes, because you do it enough. Do you feel like that kind of works in reverse for the TikTok and the Instagram stuff? Like now that you've been doing it, is it becoming more of a second nature to you where you're like, oh, okay, I got this? Or is it still just I have to, are you still kind of tweaking it and perfecting it?
I find editing on TikTok to be a bit more user friendly. Instagram, I'm still struggling with a little bit. So to me, it still feels very different than editing. I actually use Final Cut 10, which if anyone out there's listening, please don't make fun of me. That's what I learned in school. I'm sorry. I still find that to be easier. It feels like the basic principles of editing aren't the same on the computer versus in these apps. But how you use it is so different that it feels disconnected. It doesn't feel the same, especially, in editing, you upload all your scenes and then you pick out your very specific things, and you've got 4 different takes of the same line of dialogue, and you're sifting through and putting it all together as a puzzle piece. Where when you're recording things in these apps, you're recording as you go. And on TikTok, you have the option of re-recording and re-recording and re-recording and re-recording. But if you re-record, you lose what you've already done. So it feels very different while the principles are similar.
Yeah. I don't know. I can imagine maybe you don't like one of those takes in the moment, but if you were to go back and have that list of, and musicians do the same thing. It's in the band that I was in, I played bass and I was a singer. So when we go in and we would, do vocals, I would do, the song 6-7 times. And, I'm sure your husband is, being a musician is you do it a few times and you go through and you kind of piece together the takes that you like and what sounds the best. So I'm sure if you're doing something there where it's you delete the last one, if you had that list, maybe something would, it feels like it's taking away the advantage to find something that you might have missed in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when, you're recording yourself and you start looking at yourself and you've done 20 takes and you're like, my eyebrow twitched, or I had a crazy look in my eye, or I looked angry. You start being hypercritical of yourself in weird ways. It's such a different process, which, there are things I really like about it, because in film, if you do 4 takes and you don't like the delivery on any of the 4 takes, that's it. That's all you have to work with in the edit. You have to find a way to make it work. But if you're doing a little 1-minute skit on TikTok, you can re-record that line 100 times until you're happy with it. You probably shouldn't, but you could.
Well, and I will say too, it does feel like to some extent, it's got to kind of force creativity a little bit, because you are working within such a, and kind of tying back to doing an indie film. When you're doing an indie film, you've got a certain budget and you've got certain constraints that you're trying to make the best possible thing that you can make within these constraints. And it feels like, the Instagram reels, the TikToks, for as much as I sound like an old man about it, you know what I mean? There's got to be something challenging and kind of driving that creativity to say Yeah, I'm gonna like you said, I'm gonna get a video that gets 20 million views, and it's one, a 1 minute video. You know what I mean? Like, let me ask you, like, what is that feeling like? Like, you put something up, especially I guess when you are a creator, especially in that realm. Do you always find yourself kind of thinking about like, oh, maybe this will be a big one, or do you just kind of go, I'm just going to put out what I put out. And then when something like that does hit and that many people have seen it, like what is that feeling like?
That one was a little shocking because I definitely just put something out there. The thing that kind of went, I don't know what the definition of viral is, but it's the closest I've come. I did a skit about working in an office during COVID, and kind of how I felt like the company just didn't care, kind of how I felt, and I felt like I was kind of barely hanging on, but they still expected everyone to act like everything was totally fine.
Is that the one where, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure that I'm on the right page. Is that the one where you're like, my boss called me in and told me I need to start looking for another job, but
that is kind of in the same realm. It's there were several that were office related, that a lot of people saw them, which was validating to know that how I felt resonated with other people and that I wasn't alone with that. But it was also made me feel really vulnerable because all of a sudden total strangers were seeing this and sending it to their friends and commenting on it and, in some cases criticizing it. Which was not something I was used to. It felt like just very overnight with that one video. I got like thrust into like a little spotlight with total strangers. And I was not expecting that. I guess it's something, if you're putting things online, you have to be prepared that that's a possibility. But it feels like since it's never happened before, or it's happened so rarely, that you're safe from that. And I think that was the first time that's like, oh, maybe I'm not.
Right.
And there were several that were about kind of my frustrations in the office, and then how I mean, what happened with the job that I worked during COVID is they required me to be in the office the entire time, and then as everyone was coming back, they decided that I no longer had the experience they were looking for in the position. And so they were letting me go, but I had to work there for another month, which was a very frustrating experience. So I found a way to vent those frustrations, and then thousands and thousands of people saw it, which I was not expecting because I had just started that account.
Well, and it's gotta be interesting. So first of all, you're a much better person than me, because if they would have called me in the office and said, hey, gotta look for something else, but you got to work for the next month, I would have been like, well, you can go fuck yourself. Like, I'm out of here. And I do
think that's what they wanted, but they were trying to get out. They were trying to make me quit so they didn't have to pay unemployment. I'm pretty sure that they were playing mind games, and I am very stubborn.
Well, and it's also, I mean, like with the point in history that we're in right now, and especially, when those videos were coming out, it's not like you could be like, oh, well, I'll just go find another job. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very unsure time, but I can imagine that, like, especially if you're getting like, it seems like it's something that blew up out of sharing a moment of vulnerability. You know what I mean? And we're all vulnerable. Like, I'm vulnerable with my wife, and I'm sure, you're vulnerable with your husband and you share, personal and important things with your parents and stuff like that, like we all do. But I'm sure there's an added layer where when you share that kind of moment in public, and then to see that many people react to it, good or bad, that it's got to kind of add an extra layer of like, what the hell, you know what I mean? Like why are people connecting to this the way that they are, Yeah.
And it honestly, in a way it's really frustrating, and it's really upsetting, because I think it just shows, where we are, as country as a whole, as the workforce. And it was, some of the things that I saw people connect with were alarming. Like, it was alarming, the number of people who were saying, this just happened to me too, or this is about to happen to me, or I feel like this is like they're trying to make me quit too. And just the number of people coming forward saying, I also have this incredibly toxic workplace, it's validating to know you're not alone, but at the same time, it should not be happening at that rate. I'm still not psyched about that. Every now and then I still get comments on that to this day. And I just, it's shed a light on a real problem I don't know how to fix.
Yeah. And it seems like it would almost be like a double-edged sword, where it's like, just like you said, where it's like, oh, it's so shitty that this is happening to so many people, or so many people are in the situation. But then, like, at the same time, there's got to be like, it's got to be like, just the idea of like you being able to put something out that like people can connect with. Cause like, I feel like as a storyteller, as a musician, because, whatever it is you do in that creative lane, like a lot of it is, you want to put something out that people relate to, and that people like take and somehow, make it their own. You know what I mean? Like when we would play a show and people knew the words, it always blew my mind. Or when somebody would be like, this is my favorite song that you guys do. I'm like, you have a favorite song that we do? Like, that's crazy, So like to create something that somebody can relate with and be like, oh, this is me, even though it's got to be, there's got to be a weird, rewarding feeling to it, even though it is something that is kind of like about something that's kind of shitty. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I mean, that definitely does exist as well. It felt like, because there were people sharing their stories and commenting, and it they kind of had a safe space to express, this is what happened to me. And for just to find a way in 1 minute to write something that resonates with that many people across that many backgrounds is a really powerful thing. It's certainly something that I hope I can replicate on a larger scale sometime. But there also is something specific about taking a bad situation and finding humor in it and using it to make people laugh, which I've never considered myself funny. I've never considered myself a comedian, but I had people commenting saying I was funny, that they thought it was hilarious, which that was pretty weird. Like I never thought of myself in that way before. So it just, well, it did make me feel vulnerable. It also opened me up to seeing different ways that people perceive me and different things that I can do if I allow myself to be that vulnerable again. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think it just speaks to like, I don't know, kind of like what we were talking about before, where it's like, if you flap your wings, you might just take off. You know what I mean? Like I guess you don't really know what you're capable of until you kind of just throw yourself out there and see what sticks. And it's funny that you say that you don't really find that you've never really thought of yourself as like a funny. I forget what the name of it is. Part of it was in your reel, and then I was digging a little bit deeper and I found a little bit of it, but it was a project that you did where you had a ghost as a roommate.
Yes. Paranormal roommate.
Yes. And so you playing the straight man was like, cause that's what it felt like. It was very much like you were the straight man. And then your paranormal roommate was like, kind of like the oddball, and like you like having this relationship where like you're apologizing for hurting his feelings, you know what I mean? Like trying to, and I thought it was really funny. And so like to hear you say, well, I've never, I don't really think of myself as like funny or like as a comedian. I was like, well, that was pretty funny. And like, it was funny in the fact that like you were playing it so straight as if it was, as if it was just a normal person was your roommate. And like those kind of, when you guys were sitting on the couch trying to figure out what to watch on TV, and it was very funny.
Thank you. That one was a fun one. That one's been a while. I do get cast as the straight man a lot, and I'm pretty sure I can just attribute that to that dry humor and resting bitch face. But yeah, that's not the last time I was cast as the straight man. I had one where it was actually kind of a similar, two totally different production companies, but I did one as well where I guess it was a similar concept, and where I was roommates with the devil. And again, I was the straight man in that as well.
Like, Satan, don't leave your boxer shorts laying around, like just having like that. I don't know, that it really made me laugh because of how deadpan it was, and just how like I had a roommate in Michigan, and like you have those relationships where you're like, dude, you didn't do the fucking dishes. It's been 3 days since you did it. But you take that element of like you're living with a ghost, and it makes it so much funnier. So
yeah, that was a good one. That was directed by Dakota Torin a few years back, which he did with the editing on that. He's very clever.
Well, it was very cool. And I did want to ask, because we've been going now about an hour and 20 minutes, and I definitely want to be respectful of your time. And again, I really do appreciate you coming in and hanging out and kind of sharing so much of yourself. But obviously, you have a Patreon, and if people want to check that out, we're going to put the link in the show notes. But for people who want to check out your work, for people who want to support you, for people who may want to see, how you kind of flex that creativity in your way, like what, in your opinion, what's the best way for them to do that if they're listening to the show and kind of, want to check out what you do?
Definitely Instagram. That's where I post the most updates about anything that's upcoming. And then I'll be keeping that on Patreon as well. I do have content on TikTok, but I guess it's not as good if we're being like, this is what's coming up.
For sure. Well, just thank you. Number one, again, thank you for being here. But more importantly, thank you for finding a way to kind of make the most of a bad situation and use your creativity to, again, create one of my favorite Instagram pages on the internet. I love it. I like I say, if you're listening, as soon as you turn this episode off, go follow Rena, check out what she does. It's really, really cool. Will you stick around for a minute for me after we wrap up?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this is episode number 62. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We will see you guys next week for episode 63. All righty.